Welcome back, everybody. I'm Naha. This is 30 Days of Tarot, and I am so excited and honored, really, to be able to share with you what I am going to be opening. This is actually the box that I have had the longest unopened. The packing label says January 26th, 2017. And so this has been sitting in that pile. Yes, you're going to notice today that the pile's gone. I decided I needed to reclaim my sitting area over there a little bit. Believe it or not, I don't always sit on my floor. I wasn't even sure that I was going to open this as part of this series. And then tonight I just ran into a situation where I needed to film something quickly. I didn't have a lot of time, and a lot of the decks that I'm going to be opening, I want to make sure and do a lot of research and talk to the artist, etc. So this I grabbed because I thought it was just going to be, I wasn't honestly even sure that this was a tarot. But as soon as I started looking it up, it was actually the lack of what I was finding that made me realize how rare this was. No other videos on it. I couldn't even find this deck on my go-to website, which is eclectic.com, spelled with an A. I'll leave the link down below. It's a great compendium resource of all the different tarot decks that you can imagine, and you can go on there, you can see reviews, you can see usually there's at least 9 of each card shown as an example. So whenever I'm kind of wondering about if there's a deck that I want, the only place that I saw this deck on that website was where people had listed rare decks that they had in their collection, people who have been collecting back in the 70s especially. So this deck is called the Guido Bolzani Tarocchi, which is Tarocchi is Italian for tarot, and it was released by Arcana Studio in 1976. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and tell you about how I ended up with it, and we'll take a look together. I believe that I was just browsing eBay, and you know, it's funny because I do find that sometimes right when I find out about something, especially something rare, seems to be the time that it actually becomes available. And frankly, it's been so long, I really don't remember how exactly I ran across this, but I just remember seeing some of the images and going, oh wow, that's beautiful. I would really love to have that deck. Now, this was not cheap. I paid $70 for this, and it's an unopened version. And it looks like it will be if I can't get into this box. So $70 for me is a lot to pay for any tarot deck, especially one that it's just kind of like on a whim. But I guess it was actually worth it, because when I found that this is like nowhere to be found, I think that I actually got a really good deal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this out and show you guys. Now, of course, I'm going to be opening this, and is it worth more if I leave it sealed? Yeah, of course it is. But what good does that do me? Because if it's sealed, I can't enjoy it. And so I am going to be opening this up. I'm not worried about its value so that I can resell it someday. I am really, really happy to have this in my collection. And as I said, this is called the Guido Bolzani Tarocchi, Universal Tarocchi, Arcana Studio. Go ahead and show you right there. You can see where at one time there was a price tag peeled off here, probably for a lot less than $70. It says 80 cards, so I guess 2 more than a standard tarot deck. It looks like we've got a really cool magician here. Interesting. Yep, L'Albiteur. Well, we'll see this card when we get in there in a second. And almost disguised just like regular playing cards, right? Because there's the playing card suits here. And I think that's what I was unsure about, is that I thought maybe this is just going to be one of those, you know, the Tarocchi packs, where it's more like a playing card game than it is a tarot. And as I open it, I can see that it does appear to still be sealed with the shrink wrap on there. And even when I look at the first card before I open it, you might just think, oh, this just looks like regular playing cards, right? Comes with a little book here, and from what I could see, what I did find is, yes, this is all in Italian. It doesn't actually appear to have individual meanings of the cards. Obviously, I can't read Italian, but I don't see anything like that, but it does just look like there's some information on doing some spreads here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and crack the seal, and as I show you guys this deck, and as I look at it for the first time, I'm going to be able to share with you some really fascinating things that I found out about the creator of this deck. It's a smaller sized deck, more like regular standard playing cards. Here is the back. And let's just go ahead and look at some of these together. And this first card looking like the Ace of Swords. Just very bright there, but we see the A, I'm assuming this is the Ace. And right off the bat, we can see a Marseille style pip deck. So here is the 2. Interesting that we have not only just the regular standard numbers here in the corners. That's helpful because sometimes it's hard to know on these Marseille decks what number the card is, because when you start looking at a card like this and this, if it didn't have the numbers, how easy would it be for you to tell at a quick glance which card is which? Now, once you have worked with the cards, of course, you're going to start to recognize, okay, cool, 4 of Swords has this flower motif, the 5 has the sword, which would be the odd numbered sword right in the middle there. And it also has spades, which is the corresponding playing card. Here we see the flower, but in blue. They're cool, right? But wait, you guys haven't seen anything yet. So before I show you guys much further, I do want to show you what I was able to find. There's the 10. Okay, well, let's look at the, oh, I was going to say let's look at the court cards, but we don't have court cards. Next we have a Ace of Wands, and it's this club style. It's that European style suit where we see this club shape. Oh, we got a jumper. I always say to my students, when a card jumps out of the deck, stop what you're doing and look at it. Okay, this must have fallen off the bottom of the deck because this is the 21st major arcana, and it is the world, il mondo. So this is cool. We see this dragon biting its tail. We see the Hebrew letter Tav here. If you saw my video that I made recently on the Grand Esoterico, you know that we talked about the Hebrew letters and their association. Tav is pretty universally, corresponds to the world, regardless of if it's Golden Dawn or Papus Levi, Worth, Grand Esoterico correspondences. And we see this woman, classic right here, but with the 2 wands. Okay, well, let's set that down. Now, where I was able to find this deck is in this book. So I've got the Kaplan's Encyclopedia of Tarot, which you can see behind me. There's actually 4 different volumes of this. And so this is in the first volume. And you can find this on page 238. But there's not much that it tells you. It gives some pictures here in black and white. And it says Guido Bolzani Tarocchi. It says the printer who issued it, Edizoni, Europrint, Italy. But it doesn't actually even have the year that this deck came out. That's one of the things I wish this book had, because if it's going to be an encyclopedia, shouldn't it have a little bit of information, like at least the date that this was published? And it just says title trumps are French and Italian. The trump and suited cards are Arabic numbered on all 4 corners except for the knights. The pictures on the cards are set within an oval or 2 overlapping circles. The designs reflect the artist's interpretation, such as the whimsical expression of the fool, the sensuous gown of the popus, the bare breasts of the empress, and the Egyptian figure of temperance. That's all the information that is given here. Kaplan, I love you, but you didn't tell me much. And it does say that that picture of these was taken from the collection of the author. So we know there's at least one more of these decks out there. So I searched online and I was trying to find, first of all, I could not even find another version of this deck for sale. But I did find something fascinating about this artist, and I want to share it with you because if I would have looked this up a few years ago, I wouldn't have found this. So there is a gallery, and it is called Gallery Bolzoni. And I thought, oh, his own gallery that was named after him. Well, you'll hear the story in a moment, but let's continue looking at these cards. And I'm also noticing this, isn't this a yod right here? That would be the Hebrew letter that corresponds to the element of fire. Wands corresponds to fire. Also, this is the club, right? Just like we see in the corners. Clubs, just like clubs, right? So this gallery, the Bolzani Gallery in Milan, was showing a collection of works by this artist, specifically metaphysical works, that he had created between 1960 and 2016. And on the website, it gave a little bit of a bio about him. Now, this was all in Italian, so I had to translate it through Google and then sort of use my own interpretation. So I'm going to try to convey to you guys who this person was. Guido Bolzani was born in Milan on the 7th of April in 1941. Makes him an Aries. And to escape the bombings of World War II, his family moved 30 miles to the northwest to a little village called Viju. And that little village remained a point of reference throughout his life. It was a place where he thought of as his family home, where he would go to paint and where he would go hiking. Now here, we're starting to get a little bit even more esoteric. Look at this. This is the Ace of Pentacles. And we have the two eyes here on the top of the pentacle. That is reminiscent of Levy's version of the tetragrammaton pentacle, right? And it conveys that this is the top. This is the top point of the pentagram. And we see the pentagram in the figure of man, that this is the head, the arms, and the legs, or the hands and the feet. And what the upright pentacle conveys in this sense is that the head rules the body, that the mind has control over the limbs, not the limbs just acting and doing whatever they're doing, but that there is some conscious rulership over that. So it was from Bolzani's paternal grandfather, who was a painter, and he was the founder of the Bolzani Gallery back in 1908. It was from him that he inherited not only his name, Guido, but also his passion for art and painting. And I just think this is fascinating because it's been a theme that keeps coming up with artists that are influenced by their grandfathers. Have you noticed how many videos I've made where I've talked to artists and they've shared that that was the case? Now, I am pausing for a minute because I'm noticing that we're having some astrological signs here. We have Venus, and this is interesting because it's on 3. Now, Venus classically, or I should say Kabbalistically, corresponds to the number 7, but the Empress is the 3rd arcana, and the Venus corresponds to the Empress, so maybe there's something there. Let's see, this just looks like a flower here, or, I mean, it could be Neptune, right? And then here we have Mars. Now, Mars does associate with the number 5 Kabbalistically, pentagram, right? Here's 6, and 6 it has, with Jupiter, the fleur-de-lis here. So again, that would not necessarily be the Kabbalistic interpretation or the Chaldean interpretation. So Bolzani grew up in Milan. He graduated art school, and then he enrolled in the Faculty of Architecture of the Polytechnic in 1960. He got married in 1968, and he graduated the next year in 1969 after having the first of his 3 children. What do you guys see here? It's the Tree of Life. I'm in love with this deck. So we see the spheres of the Tree of Life in their triads, the supernal triad, what Dion Fortune calls the ethical triad, and the astral triad with Malkuth, the kingdom down below. Now, this says on here the letters PL. Not sure exactly what those initials are for. It might be something that's in Italian. We also see the descent of manifestation here, the lightning flash by that green line, and we see the 3 pillars, the pillar of severity, the pillar of mercy, red and blue, the colors of their spheres here, and then the central pillar, the pillar of equilibrium. We can also see that these are the colors of the elements, fire for severity, water for mercy, yellow for air, the mediating force between them. All right, so here we have the suit of cups, and we see the letter He, which corresponds to water, and these are the letters of the tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, the fourfold name of God, the 4-lettered ineffable name, and each of those letters corresponds to one of the elements. So Yod, fire, He, water, Vav, air, and the final He, earth. And so this artist was going to this technical school. Wow, look at this. It's on the 2 of Cups that we see the imprint of the studio that printed this deck. Very cool almost like a Celtic knot with these two serpents here. So we have Ida and Pingala, right? The twin serpents, the two nadis winding up through like the caduceus. But how cool that it's depicted with this design. I'm just really, really enjoying these so far. So among the design objects that he made in his early life was in the 60s. This was totally a classic signature style. He designed one of those chairs that was the plastic chairs that you could stack like the industrial ones. Yeah, that was one of the things that he created. And apparently he was also among the first to capture the potential of art through personal computers. First with a Spectrum 48K and then with a 128K Macintosh. He began to explore the paths of fractals and electronic painting and made tens of thousands of computer-made works. So although this is a Marseille style deck, we can see so much influence of the artist. I mean, I almost wouldn't call this Marseille style, only in the fact that it's a pip deck. But I think that it's very, very original. I love the bright, bold colors. And of course, he studied and designed playing cards, both cards for rummy and cards for tarot. And Bolzani taught construction science at the Carlo Cantaneo Technical Institute from 1966 to 1995. And he founded and was also on boards of things like tourism and urban cycling. So, you know, he supported these kind of social programs. And with all of this, he still managed to find time to paint. Now here we are at the court cards. And this first one we have the Knight of Cups. I'm assuming, let's maybe not make that assumption because sometimes it's the kings that are depicted on horses. But as I look at these, it does appear that this is the knight with the horse. And it also has the letter He Vav. Now, that would be the two letters that correspond to water and air. Because he is the Knight of Cups, he has a correspondence to water. But because he is a knight, he has a correspondence to air. The letters of the Tetragrammaton also correspond to the court cards. So Yod to the kings, queens, He, Vav, the knights, final He, the pages. So we see that combination here. And then this is interesting because look at the order that these are placed in. Here is the page, and he is He because he is water of earth. Here we have the queen, and here we have the king. Whoa, look at her. She looks like gorgeous ladies of wrestling, right? But do you think that's interesting that we see these aligned with the Jack, Queen, King of regular playing cards, but the knight, I would think that then they would go Knight, Queen, King, but the page is actually taking the place of the Jack, and then the Knight is its own sort of separate card. So they're not in this order. I find that a little bit interesting. I don't know, that might be a classic thing in other decks as well. So here I'll just hold up the King and the Queen so that you can get a little more of a look at those two. And then next we'll take a look at the court cards of the suit of diamonds, which is the suit of pentacles. Wow, look at this guy. And we can really see that 1970s influence here, right? Do you think this might have been one of his friends that he was depicting there? I think that it's possible. The page, here is the queen, and there is the king. So from what I could find, painting was always his focus. No matter what else he was doing, this was the focus of his expression. And within his painting, we can see his thoughts about architecture, urban planning, metaphysics, society, and the family sphere. Now, look at this next card. Remember how we saw that there were 80 cards here? I think I've just found the two cards that are the 79th and 80th card, because we see this figure, which seems to be this interesting two-headed female, male. What would you use this for? Significator card there, and then here's the 80th card. Blank. And no, this is not to fill in if you lose a card and you can make another version of it. I think that it's very apt thing to just have a blank card. And we talked about this a couple videos back with the deck that had a very, very white background, that negative space allows for the mind's eye to fill in what the artist did not necessarily depict, but what can still be conveyed, the message and the image that can still be seen. So here we see the Queen and the Page of Swords. And I love the fact that we see two different ethnicities in these two cards. And that's something that is often lacking, especially in decks, older decks and decks coming out of Europe. So I really like seeing that. Here is the King of Swords and looks like the Knight of Wands. A little bit of a throwback to the Magician here, doesn't he? With the hat, with the infinity symbol there. Now, this artist did pass away very recently on March 13th of 2016. And I just find it fascinating that less than a year after his passing is when I, for the first time, saw this deck, purchased it, and that it sat for 2 years in a pile. And just now I'm being able to experience this. And for me, this is why I see value as being able to be a tarot archivist. Because for me, it's not just about the cards. It really is about the mind and the artist who created and put their own interpretation into that. I find it so fascinating. So now we're going to get into the major arcana. Here's the Fool. We see the letter Sheen here. That would place this card in between Judgment and the World. Here we see the Magician. We saw on the box there. With the letter Aleph holding the caduceus, the hexagram here. And again, we see that the names are here in French and Italian. And rather than having the table, we see the 4 suits depicted here in front of him. He still has the Ouroboros around his waist, the sun and the moon to either side, and the stance of as above, so below. Here's the High Priestess. And you can see, interesting, that the veil is not only behind her, but covers her eyes as well. And here on her book, it says, Tav Yod Resh He, the Torah. Here is the Empress. So there was a woman who also had written, I believe that maybe she was an art critic, but she had some kind of fascinating things to say about this artist. And I wanted to read a little excerpt for you, and I'm going to set the cards down while I do this because I really want to look at them and talk about them with you. She says, it is in the 70s that Bolzani finds himself and develops his unmistakable gaze, giving life to a surprisingly visionary production. His paintings, sometimes almost psychedelic, full of nuances, often surreal and ironic, like Alice in Wonderland. Other times they reveal their own sapiential character, both organizing themselves in primary forms similar to mandalas and crowded with allegorical scenes of difficult decoding. His work gets in touch with deep and archetypal bearing that sleeps within each of us. He has the strength to impress a movement that pushes forward toward knowledge. And here knowledge was interestingly capitalized, so to me that means gnosis, which he gives to enlightenment. And I just chose this final quote from her, and this was a woman named Elisabetta Longari. She says, life is the transmission of energy, heat, and color, and painting can make the stars visible even during the day. Isn't that beautiful? All right, let's look at the rest of these majors. Here we see the 5th key, the Hierophant. He also has the Pentacle. He's almost serpentine here, isn't he? Here we see the Lovers and the Man at the Crossroads there. Now we have the combination of the letter Vav, and we have the zodiacal sign here of Virgo. Here is the Chariot. Justice as key 8. You know what these flashing colors look like? They look like the tattvas, don't they? If you know about the tattvas that have corresponding colors, for instance, a red tattva has a green background, a yellow tattva has a purple background. So when you look at them, it creates an optical effect that allows you to go into a deep meditation and travel into that. That's what these cards are kind of doing with their really bright contrasting colors. There's the Hermit. Now, in this version of correspondences, the Hermit corresponds to the letter Tet. In the Golden Dawn, Tet would correspond to strength. But there's something interesting that we see with this, and it's depicted in different decks. And you might see this even in decks that you don't think are necessarily super esoteric. The letter Tet means a serpent. And there are some decks where we see, I think Worth did this in his deck, we actually see a serpent, like a snake, with alongside the Hermit. So it alludes to this older correspondence of the letter Tet to the Hermit. Here is the wheel. We see the monkeys going around. Actually, we see a monkey and a dog, and then, of course, the Sphinx on the top as stillness. Ha! This is a great... Look at this version of strength. We got this guy seemingly standing very still there, taking all of that in. I don't know. He's not running through this lion. I'm not sure what this is all about. Interesting, we have the letter Kaf, and then both of them are sort of forming the Kaf, that shape. The Kaf means the palm. So it's almost like they're making something like that, right? Here we see the Hanged Man. This is the symbol for alchemical sulfur. And we can see his money raining down there. Those are 2 bags of money that he's losing. There's the Death card, number 13. This is cool. So look, she is actually standing upon the upside down triangle, which is the sigil for water. And then here she's standing on a sphere, which I suppose would convey the earth. Looks like these eyes raining down, very psychedelic. Here's the Devil. Now with the downward pointing pentagram, signifying matter ruling over spirit. Here is the Tower, classic like the Tower of Babel. That's that ziggurat look with the spiraling upward. And the Tower in some decks called Le Maison Dieu, the House of God. We see that fiery breath from source here, blowing that top off. L'Étoile, the star. I haven't seen all the zodiacal correspondences in here, so I believe they're there. Oh, I love this one. Look at that. Beautiful moon, isn't it? Rather than the sea down here, we have the Vesica Piscis. And we see the sign of Cancer down here, as the moon is ruled by Cancer. Okay, is that what we're seeing? Let me go back to this other card. Okay, so we saw Virgo here on the Lovers, and I don't recall if in the correspondences the letter Vav corresponds to Virgo, but Virgo is ruled by Venus, and Venus has there's a connotation of Venus, of course, with the Lovers, so maybe that's what the connection is. I'm not exactly sure. All right, so just a few more cards left. Here's the Sun. And again, we see that Vesica Piscis, the cosmic womb. Interesting Judgment card with the Phoenix here. Isn't this like a rainbow phoenix, which is rising? And that oval shape, which we have seen throughout. There's something going on in this background shape. It was mentioned in the Kaplan book, but see how here, that shape, it's squeezed in here, almost reminds me of the organic shape of the fractals, which apparently Bolzani was interested in later on. And then we already saw the World, which will finish us off. So what do you guys think? I think that these are very, very cool. To be quite honest, I did not even know that these images were going to have any of the Hebrew. Clearly, this is an artist that knew his esoteric aspects. Very, very special deck here. So if you ever are able to get your hands on Universal Tarocchi by Guido Bolzani, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I think that it's absolutely stunning. I loved finding out a little bit about this artist. Too bad that he's no longer with us, but it's wonderful that his art lives on. So thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.